One day, a boy finds himself on the verge of death, only to awaken in a peculiar place. As he surveys his surroundings, he is met with emptiness, and for a moment, he wonders if he has finally reached heaven. However, his shock deepens when he checks his status bar and discovers that he has been reincarnated into another world. Not as a human, but as an archdemon, a demon lord. Now, his duty as a demon lord is to protect the assigned dungeon. For if the dungeon perishes, so will the demon lord. The system works both ways. To safeguard his life within the dungeon, he must enhance his skills and grow stronger. Upon examining the status bar, he realizes that most items and food in the dungeon can be acquired with dungeon points. However, the challenge lies in accumulating these dungeon points. He learns that DP can be obtained by defeating monsters other than those summoned by the dungeon master, with the amount depending on the strength of the monster. DP can also be acquired when the dungeon master eliminates intruders, based on the intruder's strength. Furthermore, absorbing the corpses of monsters or other objects that can be considered food within the dungeon provides DP, determined by the nature of the items. Lastly, the size of the dungeon contributes to the DP earned through self-generation. Since none of these circumstances are likely to occur anytime soon, the boy decides to explore the outside world for the time being. However, his carefree exploration takes an unexpected turn when a tremendously powerful dragon appears out of nowhere. The man, known as Yuki, is filled with a mix of surprise and anxiety. Yuki attempts to negotiate peacefully with the dragon, hoping to resolve the situation without conflict. Nevertheless, the dragon has already resolved that no one will escape its wrath when trespassing on its territory. Yuki is astonished to discover that the dragon can speak as he examines its status panel. His wish that the dragon would be a low-level creature like himself is shattered when he realizes that the dragon is an ancient supreme one with a level of 987. Yuki panics, but manages to prevent the dragon from unleashing its flame by smelling something that could save his life. He proposes a deal to the dragon, admitting that he has no chance of defeating it with his current power. However, he refuses to accept his fate without resistance, vowing to find another way to tame the dragon. Surprisingly, the key to winning the dragon's favor lies in offering it chocolate bars. The dragon has a fondness for sweets, and Yuki, having detected the scent of honey on the dragon's breath, seizes this opportunity. The dragon attempts to hide its preference, but after taking a bite, it becomes captivated by the delicious and rich sweetness of the chocolate bar, surpassing even the taste of honey. Yuki proposes that if the dragon promises not to harm him and to leave the cave where he resides, it will be granted the privilege of enjoying chocolate bars whenever it desires. However, Yuki makes it clear that he cannot produce a sufficient amount to satisfy the dragon's enormous appetite. In response, the dragon transforms into a human form, stunning Yuki with the sight of a cute naked girl standing before him. The dragon, now in human form, explains that Yuki, in his human form, can produce as many chocolates as needed to satiate her cravings. Yuki takes her to the dungeon, where they solidify their agreement and introduce themselves to each other. The dragon's name is Leficios, or Leffy for short. Leffy comments that among all the dungeons she has encountered, Yuki's is the most comfortable, making it the perfect place for her to reside. She has decided to stay in Yuki's dungeon permanently, as she plans to leave her current uncomfortable location. Yuki tries to advise her to consider her decision more carefully, but Leffy is resolute in her determination to stay. Reluctantly, Yuki agrees to her request. The next day, while Leffy is sound asleep, Yuki sets out to improve his dungeon for the first time. He designates different areas within the dungeon, starting with the cave as the primary dungeon area. Yuki senses a change in the atmosphere as he does so, and he sets his sights on expanding the dungeon further. However, he realizes that he lacks sufficient dungeon points to do so. Fortunately, thanks to Leffy, whom the dungeon sees as a trespasser, Yuki's DP income begins to increase steadily. To expand the dungeon further, he must patiently wait for his DP score to rise again. In the meantime, Yuki decides to attempt summoning monsters, starting with the cheapest ones. With a click, a cute slime named Achai appears before him. Yuki finds the monster unexpectedly adorable and gives it a name. However, his pride is shattered when he checks the slime's status panel and discovers that the small creature has higher luck stats than he does. While he experiences a minor breakdown, a creature known as Cerberus, with 3 heads and a level of 32, catches his attention. Yuki locks his gaze on the trespassing Cerberus, but Achai intervenes, preventing him from getting any closer. She rushes toward the 3-headed monster, hoping to defeat it once and for all. Yuki supports his ally, referring to her as his Pokémon, and cheers her on, declaring that the opponent's higher level doesn't matter. However, his excitement turns to dismay as Achai gets defeated by a single blow. Yuki then dashes toward his beloved slime and fiercely attacks Cerberus, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Surprisingly, Yuki's kick proves to be incredibly powerful, obliterating Cerberus's heads. Even Yuki is shocked by his abilities, as a single kick raises his skills from level 1 to 12 instantly, granting him a new skill, martial arts. Unfortunately, his luck stat remains unchanged. Despite possessing relatively high stats, Yuki doubts he could stand a chance against the super monster, Leffy. After regaining his composure, Yuki rushes to check on Achai, relieved to find her unharmed, possibly due to her regeneration skill. He blames himself for allowing his pet to face such a formidable opponent. From that point forward, he resolves to be the one to confront and battle enemies. To achieve this, Yuki requests that Leffy teach him some magic. Yuki emphasizes his high magic stat as a basis for his belief that he can use magic, but he soon discovers that it is not as simple as he initially thought. Nevertheless, Leffy agrees to teach him, with one condition: more chocolates. Yuki warns her about the potential harm of consuming too much chocolate, as it could lead to cavities. However, he is taken aback when he learns that cavities are considered a negative status in this particular world. Instead of chocolates, Yuki offers Leffy a pack of cookies, to which she initially hesitates but eventually falls in love with due to their sweet and crunchy texture. Leffy's satisfaction with her new dwelling in Yuki's dungeon leads to the commencement of magic lessons. At the start of the lesson, Leffy declares her intention to make Yuki the most powerful mage in the world. She asks for Yuki's hand to make him feel like a genuine member of this world. As powerful energy surges through Yuki's body and the surroundings, he realizes that this energy is distinct from the mana he typically senses within the dungeon's air. It feels more potent and overwhelming, but fortunately, Yuki's mind remains intact. Leffy explains that not all humans can withstand her powerful magic, but Yuki proves capable. Following Leffy's instructions, Yuki focuses intensely and visualizes every detail of what she says. Then, he repeats the words she chants, attempting to harness the magic himself. Yuki follows Leffy's instructions and visualizes a distant land with an expansive plain. In his imagination, he envisions a single flower on that plain. Leffy then urges him to imagine plucking the flower and holding it in his hands. As Yuki opens his palm and casts the spell, he is amazed to find a beautiful flower in his hands. However, his amazement turns gloomy as he realizes that he didn't learn magic just to create flowers. Yuki expresses his desire for something more, and Leffy advises him to imagine something else, like a flame. After concentrating, Yuki successfully conjures fire on his fingertips, impressing Leffy. Yuki's excitement causes his control over the magic to slip, but Leffy is there to prevent any disaster. Leffy teaches Yuki that to stop the magic, he should stop the circulation within his body. Yuki follows the guidance and manages to extinguish the fire. Leffy is amazed by Yuki's abilities and reminds him to be efficient with his mana while using magic. Leffy decides to conclude the first lesson, emphasizing that the most important aspect is the visualization and that chanting assists in imagining things. Curious about his magical potential, Yuki asks if he can create something other than flowers and fire. Leffy explains that magical abilities are divided into elements like earth, fire, water, and wind, along with others such as time, light, and darkness. Yuki has an affinity for earth and fire magic but is unaware of his potential with the rest. Leffy encourages him to explore and assures him of her presence to support and guide him. Yuki tries to utilize his magic for daily needs, like water for bathing and wind for drying. However, he is uncertain about his affinity for other elements, since he can only manipulate water effectively at the moment. He decides to bathe using his water skills. Intrigued, Leffy joins him in the bath. Outside the dungeon, a group of men chase a young girl into the haunted forest but retreat in fear of Leffy, allowing the girl to escape. Soon, it will be revealed where the girl finds herself. After bathing, Yuki leaves Leffy at home and explores the forest. Since no one has visited the dungeon, he plans to collect dungeon points on his own. The lack of animals and monsters in Leffy's territory poses a problem, so Yuki needs to find new ways to collect DP. He focuses on expanding the dungeon by mapping the area, and successfully encounters strong monsters. Yuki returns home to cook but discovers that all the food, including the 1-week supply, is gone, leaving only Leffy to finish it. Yuki expresses dissatisfaction, leading to a heated argument with Leffy. However, Leffy apologizes and promises not to repeat such actions. With no food available, they decide to fast for the day. As compensation, Leffy rushes outside and, after 30 minutes, presents Yuki with chocolate mace, created using monsters. Despite the gruesome sight, Yuki realizes that corpses can be converted to DP, which proves useful for expanding the dungeon. The next day, Yuki continues his work, killing monsters to gather DP. Since he couldn't use fire magic due to training restrictions, he focuses on developing his water and earth magic skills. After mapping the entire area and significantly increasing DP revenue, Yuki discovers a body in a corner, thinking it's a monster's corpse. To his surprise, it's the body of the little girl who was chased earlier. Yuki rushes to her aid, applying a high-grade potion to her wounds. Realizing she's safe, Yuki decides to bring the girl, Aruna, back to the house. Yuki and Leffy observe that Aruna is a vampire, and not just an ordinary one but a rare species. In recent years, beautiful species like vampires and succubi have been hunted and enslaved by humans, leading them to the brink of extinction. The conversation awakens Aruna, who finds herself in an unfamiliar place. Yuki reassures her and tries to gain her trust by playing with her. Slowly, Aruna starts to let her guard down. Yuki introduces himself and Leffy, and Aruna introduces herself with a smile. Yuki inquires why Aruna was deep in the forest, and she explains that she was being chased by humans. Yuki empathizes with her, realizing she has gone through significant hardship. Yuki reassures Aruna that there are no scary humans around and she can stay as long as she wants. Aruna, however, expresses her belief that she should be dead like her parents, as humans have told her she doesn't deserve to live. Hearing this statement, Yuki becomes furious and tries to convince Aruna that she deserves to live freely, regardless of what others say. During their conversation, Aruna's hunger becomes apparent when her belly rumbles. Yuki offers to cook her some food, but it becomes evident that what Aruna really wants is Yuki's blood. Without hesitation, Yuki tells her she can have as much as she wants. Meanwhile, Leffy questions Yuki's decision and expresses concern about his well-being, as he anticipates getting weak when bitten by a young girl like Aruna. Yuki then asks Leffy to take Aruna to the bath and offers her 2 bags of cookies in exchange. Another new resident has arrived at Yuki's dungeon, and the house is expected to become livelier. Yuki's life in the dungeon seems to have become easier, possibly due to his overwhelming cuteness. While Yuki is engaged in a game of luck, selecting items from his menu panel, he continues to receive undesirable items one after another. Interestingly, Aruna appears to be able to see the menu panel in front of Yuki, unlike Leffy, who cannot. When Yuki presses one of the buttons, a white wolf-like creature is summoned. Leffy informs them that the high-level creature is just a baby and will grow stronger in the future. Yuki becomes curious about why Leffy cannot see his status and menu panel, while Aruna can. Leffy explains that it's because of a marriage ritual, suggesting that Yuki sees Aruna as family while viewing Leffy as an intruder. This explains why Aruna has certain privileges regarding Yuki's abilities. It is revealed that for vampires, the act of sucking another person's blood is equivalent to a marriage ritual. Therefore, Aruna is now technically Yuki's family after consuming his blood. This revelation shocks Yuki, as evidenced by his facial expression. He rushes out of the house, declaring that Leffy won't have snacks for 3 days because she didn't inform him about this earlier. Leffy is upset by the unfairness of the situation, but Yuki is too preoccupied with his own concerns to care about her protest. Yuki decides to pretend that nothing has happened and focus on his main task for the day, obtaining a pistol from the last episode. The sound of gunshots echoes through the forest, and the revolver helps compensate for his previous losses. It allows him to store mana-infused bullets and remains undetectable to opponents. Yuki checks with his mana eyes and confirms that there are no leaks. This makes the revolver a convenient tool. After training with the new weapon, Aruna summons her creature, named Rur, who demonstrates unique skills such as Godspeed and the ability to summon and control chains. Rur can also change its body size, intriguing and astonishing Yuki. This leads to a strong bond, and Yuki invites Rur to stay in his dungeon. Yuki expresses his desire to learn new skills, particularly how to fly. However, he struggles with it and feels devastated despite spending a significant amount of money on a flight skill. To make his efforts worthwhile, Yuki seeks Leffy's help. Initially hesitant, Leffy agrees when Yuki presents her with a box of donuts. As they venture outside, Leffy complains about the brightness of the sun, which Yuki explains is due to her extended stay indoors. Yuki shows off his wings, impressing Leffy, who compliments their magnificence. Yuki reciprocates the compliment, causing Leffy to become flustered. They then focus on the task at hand. Leffy teaching Yuki flight techniques using her imitation wings. Leffy demonstrates her flying skills, and Yuki manages to get his wings to work for the first time. Excited, Yuki marvels at the view from above and briefly gets lost in Leffy's beauty before refocusing. Yuki asks Leffy if she still intends to protect her territory, but she indicates that she no longer has such plans. They continue flying and trying to catch up with each other. In the meantime, in the guild office of Alfiro, a border town, a guild issues an urgent quest to a group of hunters. The hunters discuss accepting the quest, as refusal can harm their reputation. They also discuss rumors of an elusive monster appearing more frequently in the haunted forest, which they are tasked with investigating. The following day, the adventurers embark on the quest, encountering monsters along the way. Surprisingly, a horned tiger appears near the forest entrance, where adventurers rarely encounter such creatures. This raises questions about the forest's unusual state. However, before the tiger poses a threat, Rur intervenes and eliminates it. The adventurers are shocked when Rur simply walks away without targeting them. Relieved, they hurry to leave the forest. During their escape, one adventurer notices a collar around Rur's neck, suggesting that someone has tamed this high-level monster. The next day, Yuki and Rur have fun together, focusing on hunting. They move deeper into the forest, targeting horned tigers. Yuki notices that his weapons frequently break, prompting him to consider creating a stronger weapon upon returning home. For now, he uses a metal bar for the hunt. However, they find themselves pursued by a horde of fast-moving monsters. Yuki resorts to his magic to defend against the monsters, but they retaliate with acid attacks. Aware that his MP will be depleted if he continues, Yuki recalls an item box he possesses, which freezes time within the space. Yuki retrieves preserved meat from the box and distracts the monsters with it. With the monsters temporarily occupied, Yuki needs to devise a new plan. After a brief silence, they decided to move on. When they get home, Yuki immediately checks the available weapons for purchase and Aruna becomes curious if Yuki will perform another magic trick. Yuki explains his ambition to become a creative demon lord and mentions that if he doesn't have a weapon, he will make one himself. However, Leffy doubts Yuki's skills, but he confidently dismisses her skepticism. Yuki emphasizes that the key factors for weapon creation are high-quality materials, vivid imagination, and the user's mana capacity, all of which he possesses. He believes that the perfect combination of magic and a weapon embodies the demon lord he aims to be. To practice his weapon creation, Yuki first turns a lump of iron into a knife by using his mana and activating a skill. Yuki and Aruna are amazed when a dagger appears. Yuki tests the sharpness of the dagger and even Leffy is impressed, acknowledging that crafting such weapons is usually the domain of skilled blacksmiths. Yuki decides to make another weapon, this time a larger double-edged knife with an affinity for water magic. He envisions a streamlined or teardrop-like shape and successfully creates the weapon. However, Yuki is not satisfied with the cute design, so he attempts to make a sword using materials obtained during hunting. However, due to Leffy's interruptions, he loses concentration and ends up creating a giant flower instead. Frustrated, Yuki teases Leffy, causing them to start bickering again. Aruna, on the other hand, decides to let them be and starts playing. The next day, Aruna informs Yuki that she will be playing outside. Yuki allows her but reminds her to return home before dark. However, Aruna doesn't come back, and Yuki becomes concerned about her disappearance. He searches the area but only finds the smell of humans and traces of a carriage, suggesting that she may have been abducted by a slave merchant. Yuki asks Leffy about the nearest human habitation, and she reveals that it would take about 3 hours of flying to reach the dungeon. They set off, and as they approach the human habitat, they encounter a flock of dragons flying in the sky. Leffy explains that they are her underlings and intends to use them to confront whoever took Aruna. They arrive at the city, causing soldiers and nobles to panic. Yuki instructs Leffy to keep the dragons under control while he searches for Aruna. Yuki realizes he cannot cause havoc in the city, as it might harm innocent people. Meanwhile, Aruna wakes up in a cage, realizing she is captured by the same men who killed her parents. They express anger towards her and inform her that she will be treated as a plaything for perverted nobles. Despite the pain, Aruna tries to remain composed, relying on her belief in Yuki and Leffy's eventual rescue. She prays to the Earth Spirit for assistance, leading to the unlocking of her collar and invisibility granted by the Dark Spirit. Determined to save everyone, she vows to return. Back in the city, Yuki breaks into a room where monster slaves are being evacuated. He senses that Aruna is not present and confronts the men responsible for her abduction. Yuki, realizing he is no longer bound by human emotions, becomes furious and effortlessly kills the attackers. The remaining enemies, unwilling to back down, engage in a futile fight and are defeated. Yuki discovers that they had brought disturbance crystals to weaken his familiar, but given their low strength, it is futile against him. Yuki decides to ask the slaves about Aruna's whereabouts, but ultimately decides to confront the Lord of the mansion directly. The Lord is about to face a difficult situation. The Lord continuously pleads, acknowledging his lack of knowledge compared to what the listener already knows. It became evident to them at the moment they realized that the girl had disappeared from her locked cage, despite being secured with advanced magical shackles and guarded by a sentry who ended up dying. Yuki's astonishment grew as he realized that Aruna was truly a clever child. The first time he encountered her, she was being pursued by the same individuals. After a while, reinforcements arrived, and the Lord of the mansion, filled with joy, ordered his men to eliminate Yuki once and for all. However, in a flash, all of them were killed. Meanwhile, Aruna, feeling scared, sought her parents' presence as memories of her past flooded back. Aruna began to cry again, but she recalled her mother's words, urging her to stay alive, and a glimmer of hope returned to her eyes. Returning to Yuki, as he stepped outside the mansion, a group of men awaited him with smirks on their faces. He was amazed by the grand welcome. Aruna, hiding at the side of the mansion, hugged herself out of fear, but all she could think about was wanting to embrace Yuki again, play games with Leffy, and nap together. She desperately longed to converse with Yuki once more, yearning not to be alone again. Tears welled up as Yuki screamed in anger, and Aruna knew exactly where to run. She rushed toward Yuki's arms in a little alleyway, and when she finally reached him, Yuki embraced her tightly, assuring her that everything would now be all right. However, before they could celebrate, Yuki warned her that the place was dangerous and advised her to leave town with Reversed. In a moment of assurance, Aruna revealed to Yuki that there were others who had been abducted just like her, and she wanted Yuki to save them as well. Yuki, with a reassuring look on his face, told Aruna to leave it to him. With that, Aruna rushed out of town, while Yuki seethed in rage, vowing to kill every human who had wronged Aruna, regardless of the consequences. In the first scene of this episode, Yuki declared that he would slay every human he encountered, now that the Demon Lord's fury had consumed him. He no longer cared about anything else and was determined to ensure the extinction of their race. As he took a step forward, everyone around him froze. Before Yuki could land a blow on any of the humans, Leffy entered the scene, reminding him to stay calm since they had already achieved their objective by seeking revenge against those who had wronged Aruna. Leffy asked Yuki to go home with her, as they had nothing left to do in the city. Additionally, Leffy was extremely hungry and demanded a feast from Yuki to reward her for her hard work. Though momentarily speechless, Yuki suddenly smiled and promised Leffy something special upon their return. Leffy's excitement soared, eager for the special treatment she was about to receive. She jokingly warned Yuki that if it wasn't truly special, she wouldn't forgive him. Yuki assured her that once she ate the food he would provide, she wouldn't be satisfied with ordinary snacks for a while. In response, Leffy coped with the anticipation, understanding she had to be careful. However, their conversation was interrupted by Lalo Lubia, the town's lord, entering the scene. Lalo offered his apologies for the trouble caused to Yuki and his family, expressing respect for the Demon King on behalf of the people. He invited Yuki and Leffy to his mansion for a brief discussion, assuring them it wouldn't take much time. Inside the mansion, Lalo once again apologized for the events that transpired, promising to enhance supervision to prevent similar incidents in the future. Leffy realized that Lalo may not have recognized her identity due to being in a treaty with humans. Yuki also speculated that Lalo possessed an appraisal skill and likely knew that Leffy was the supreme dragon. On the other hand, Yuki became curious about the treaty after learning of its existence. Leffy explained that in the past, during an era where everyone sought to prove their strength, countless foolish individuals would challenge her every day. It reached a point where she contemplated annihilating the entire kingdom. However, the king approached her with a proposal to avoid further conflict, leading to the establishment of the treaty. Leffy addressed the Lord, making it clear that he knew the girl who had been kidnapped was her own family. She emphasized that those who had committed atrocities against her must be prepared to face the consequences. Lalo pleaded for Leffy's forgiveness, expressing their willingness to uphold the treaty and do their best to adhere to its conditions. Yuki, given the decision-making authority, declared that he didn't care about the people's actions. However, if another heinous act were to occur, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate them. Lalo promised to ensure that nobody would enter the haunted forest again, and at Yuki's request, he agreed to bring every slave from the mansion, as Yuki intended to take them with him. A Upon Yuki and Leffy's departure, the Lord sighed in relief, hoping they would never cross paths again. Unfortunately, fulfilling Yuki and Leffy's request to keep people away from the haunted forest seemed challenging, as a faction within the kingdom proposed exploiting its rich natural resources. The Lord feared that the kingdom might seize the opportunity to send an army to the forest, instigating havoc. Consequently, he aimed to prevent this at all costs. Meanwhile, Yuki found himself in a dilemma regarding the female slaves they had rescued. When asked if they had a home to return to, most of them did, and Leffy requested her dragons to escort them back. The remaining two slaves, Layla and Eluan, expressed their willingness to serve the demon lord and repay the favor. Layla belonged to the sheephorn race, while Eluan was a member of the werewolf race. Layla was awestruck by Rur's presence, considering her a god to the werewolves. She pleaded with Yuki to allow her to stay, even if it meant performing household chores. Eluan desired to serve as well, eager to boast about her experiences upon returning to her village. They all introduced themselves one by one. As they were about to enter, Yuki expressed his gratitude to Leffy for her assistance throughout the rescue mission. Leffy shared her thoughts, acknowledging that Yuki had brought color to her once monochrome life since the day they met. She hoped that he would continue to do so in the days to come. When Leffy encountered the two remaining slaves, she expressed gratitude to Yuki for saving them, but couldn't help feeling a tinge of sadness at the fact that he now had new concubines, as she teasingly referred to them. Yuki was caught off guard, knowing all too well who had made such remarks about Aruna, none other than Leffy herself. Layla and Eluan entered the room wearing cute maid dresses. Recognizing that Layla had demonic lineage, Yuki decided to inquire about the position of a demon lord from a demon king's perspective. Layla honestly explained that they were beings modified by dungeons to fulfill their roles. For instance, if a dungeon desired a goblin as the demon lord, that goblin would be imbued with power surpassing that of a regular goblin. This newfound understanding granted Yuki further insight into his role in the new world. While the girls were busy exploring on their own, Yuki went out on another mission to add a flatland area to the dungeon using his demon wings. He flew above the area, surveying its spaciousness, which measured 1 kilometer in height and 5 kilometers in width. Yuki decided to enhance the flatland by adding rivers, mountains, a bridge, and sakura trees. He even planned to create a Japanese-style area where he could relax and enjoy a hot bath. During this time, Aruna entered the room and asked Yuki to wash his hair. Yuki took the opportunity to tell Aruna about his plans to have a picnic with everyone in the flatland. However, Aruna seemed unfamiliar with the concept of a picnic. Yuki took the time to explain it to her. They all eventually entered the hot bath, where Yuki asked Leffy if she knew the requirements for getting a title. She explained that usually, one received a title after doing something great or if they displayed defiance against the laws of nature. However, there were also people who believed titles were bestowed by God based on their observations. Yuki realized that there was no God in the new world he was in, but there was someone called a judge who brought judgment to guilty people, which would be the real almighty God of all worlds. While discussing titles, Yuki noticed that he had recently acquired a peculiar title, which seemed to be useful. He wondered if Leffy, as the Supreme Dragon, had other titles as well. Leffy confirmed this but said she kept them to herself since the title of Supreme Dragon was already sufficient. Yuki also realized that he couldn't see any of Leffy's skills, indicating that he and Leffy had the same ability to conceal their powers. Additionally, Yuki discovered that as a demonkin, he was technically immortal, which initially frightened him at the thought of outliving everyone. However, Leffy reassured him that she, as a dragonkin, also had a long lifespan. While engrossed in their conversation, Aruna started dozing off, and Yuki took care of her. Leffy eventually found out about Yuki's new title, Supreme Dragon Master, which greatly upset her. Later, as night fell, Layla and Eluan prepared for bed. It was revealed that Layla belonged to a tribe of researchers and had plans to conduct research on dungeons and demon lords. Eluan, on the other hand, was not an ordinary wolf race member but the daughter of the wolf chief. They both decided to keep their identities a secret from Yuki. With another long day ahead, they bid each other good night's sleep. The next day, as planned, they went for a picnic. Yuki assured everyone that they would have a great time and play all day, although they were confused about the lack of recreational activities in the area. Yuki had already prepared various activities, including a sled ride that everyone enjoyed. After a day of play, they gathered for lunch with the bentos prepared by Layla and Eluan. Leffy expressed a desire for dessert, and Yuki promised to provide it. Meanwhile, Eluan finally realized that Leffy was the Supreme Dragon, whom she had mistaken for a mere person Yuki had saved. In the Alicia Kingdom, the king and the prince were having an argument. The prince, named Dude, wanted to seek revenge on Yuki and attack the haunted forest, risking the dignity of the kingdom. Despite the king's efforts to dissuade him, the prince was determined to kill Yuki. As a result, he ordered a group of soldiers to attack the haunted forest. Yuki and Leffy noticed the incoming intruders, and Yuki observed that their equipment was mediocre. Leffy suggested eliminating them all, but Yuki wanted to try something else first. He entered one of the tents and confronted a soldier, warning him that the area belonged to him and that he would not hesitate to kill them all if they persisted. The soldier was puzzled by Yuki's initial warning, considering his overwhelming power. Yuki then clarified that he didn't want to exterminate all the pests that came his way because it was too troublesome. Surprisingly, his plan went quite smoothly as some of the intruders immediately left after receiving his message. However, there were others who remained steadfast and couldn't be easily persuaded. This annoyed Leffy, who felt irritated by Yuki's nonchalant return. Yuki apologized to her and promised to show her something interesting. He revealed the traps he had set around the dungeon, including the Evil Eye, a golem-type monster that could transmit video information using the dungeon's mana. He had also added a hallucination-inducing tree called the Roshkif Bomb, which spread mana to create illusions for living beings nearby. As a result, all the soldiers fell into madness, seeing each other as enemies and killing themselves one by one. Leffy doubted whether these traps would be enough to annihilate all the soldiers, but Yuki had prepared backup plans, such as acid swamps and threads spread throughout the area. After a few hours, the bloody scene finally came to an end. However, Leffy still wanted more excitement. A few days later, one of the soldiers who had retreated reported the events in the forest to the capital but was unexpectedly fired instead of being listened to. Frustrated, he vented his feelings in a tavern, criticizing the prince's greed and recklessness for sending troops to a place inhabited by such dangerous monsters. Lord Lalo, who governed the land near the haunted forest, overheard the soldier's emotions and saw an opportunity. He offered the soldier a new job, capitalizing on his skills and frustration. Meanwhile, Yuki and the others enjoyed their time exploring the forest. They discovered a 1,000-year-old tree, a meat-eating monster plant, and even had fun playing with Rur. They also rested by a peaceful lake. Initially hesitant, Leffy eventually joined in the activities with Layla and Aruna. The next day, Yuki experienced a racial evolution after reaching a certain level, a phenomenon that commonly occurs in races other than humans. This surprised Layla, who was conducting research on dungeons and demon lords, and even made Yuki uncomfortable with her intense gaze. Yuki noticed that along with his racial evolution, the list of dungeon items had been updated, and Leffy observed changes in his mana quality. Yuki wondered if Leffy had ever experienced a racial evolution, but as an ancient dragon, she was already the strongest form of her race. However, Yuki believed she might still undergo one once she reached level 1000. Leffy also noticed that Yuki's appearance hadn't changed like others who had undergone a racial evolution, but she was fascinated by his transformed wings. Amidst their interactions, Yuki checked his new updates and discovered a skill called Building Facilities, which allowed him to construct his Demon Lord's castle. However, it required a significant amount of magic power and imagination. Yuki believed he could achieve it through practice. He also learned from Layla that he could increase his magic power and asked Leffy for help. Leffy offered to lend him her magic powers or suggested emptying his magic power to increase its capacity. Yuki decided to train his magic power control using water magic. After a few days, Leffy was shocked to see Yuki in his new form, but he quickly returned to his true form. Yuki had awakened from a long nap, and he took Leffy to the step area to show her the miniatures he had made while striving to build his own castle. Leffy suggested seeking advice from Layla, known for her knowledge in building arts. Yuki had already asked Layla for help, but she only focused on his magic instead of providing guidance. Nevertheless, Yuki's skills had improved, and Leffy admired his impressive miniatures, although some were peculiar, like the non-functioning super transforming and docking Mofudir MK2. Their bickering continued until they both grew tired. Finally, Yuki completed his preparations and took everyone to witness his grand masterpiece. The enormous castle surpassed everyone's expectations, and Yuki couldn't help but feel emotional seeing his dream become a reality. However, due to its immense size, living in the castle seemed impractical. The long corridors and numerous rooms made navigation difficult. Nevertheless, it served as a deterrent to anyone daring enough to enter the haunted forest. Leffy tried to cheer up Yuki by sitting on his lap and offering comfort, unaccustomed to seeing him sulking. Yuki reassured Leffy that it was alright and that he would always be there to laugh it off whenever she did something absurd. Despite it all, he was genuinely grateful for her efforts. Meanwhile, in the Alicia Kingdom castle, the prince was furious at the failure of the soldiers he had sent on a mission. He contemplated whether they needed a larger army to ensure victory, but he was also wary of drawing too much attention from the king if they mobilized additional troops. The prince was well aware that he couldn't cover up for the nobles due to the mission's failure, and he knew that their trust in him had already hit rock bottom. He believed that their only chance of success was through the help of the heroes from the church, so he planned to bribe the church with a substantial amount of money to persuade them to join the mission. One of the heroes, Nell, had been assigned to enter Yuki's territory, and it was only a matter of time before she discovered what awaited her in the anxiety-inducing forest. Yuki quickly detected Nell's presence and couldn't help but be surprised that heroes truly existed in worlds like theirs. As a precaution, he instructed everyone to retreat to the safe chamber, acknowledging that Nell might be surprisingly strong. However, Yuki was confident that he would emerge victorious regardless. When Nell reached the dungeon, she was taken aback by the sight of the gigantic castle. Yuki, on the other hand, found great joy and amusement in seeing the so-called strong hero frightened by his castle. But that wasn't the end of it. Yuki had more surprises in store and eagerly anticipated Nell's reaction to his traps as she entered the castle. Despite her fear, Nell proceeded down the halls, trying to maintain her composure. However, the moving suits of armor and the feeling of being watched made her increasingly uneasy. Suddenly, one of Yuki's traps startled her, causing her to jump in fright. Yuki, on the other hand, found the situation hilarious and burst into laughter. Yuki then revealed that the ones behind the castle traps were called raids, a type of monster composed of 3 spirits: Ro, specializing in spirit magic; Rei, proficient in psychokinesis; and Rui, a master of illusion magic. Yuki had ensured that Nell wouldn't be able to detect these 3 girls, making the dungeon's defense system, Haunted Mansion mode, a resounding success. Yuki had even considered adding more defense systems, such as a totally killing mode and a destroy mode. But he reluctantly agreed to Aruna and Leffy's request to tone down the traps, as Nell was seen crying out of fear. Although it spoiled his fun, Yuki decided to comply with the girl's wishes. As he reached Nell, he tried to explain that the things people knew about him were not true. All this time, Nell had believed that Yuki was a villain who killed innocent people. Yuki clarified that he only killed those who wished to harm him and his family. His statement left Nell shocked, and she hesitantly asked if he would also kill her, considering she was there to bring harm to him. Yuki reassured her that he would never harm a girl, especially someone like her whom he saw as a brat. Just as Yuki was about to leave, Nell stopped him and asked for his help. Overwhelmed by fear, Nell found it difficult to move her knees. Yuki offered her a bath at the inn, and while contemplating why she had come to the castle, Nell couldn't help but be intrigued by Yuki's kind-hearted nature, which contradicted the image of the feared demon lord. During the refreshing bath, Nell accidentally overheard Yuki and Leffy's conversation. Leffy expressed frustration at Yuki for adding another girl to the castle, but Yuki explained that he had no ill intentions towards Nell. He simply wanted to help her since she had nowhere else to go, especially because it was already nighttime. Layla and Eluan entered the room, thanking Nell for taking care of Aruna while they were bathing. Yuki offered to help them prepare everything Nell needed for the night, but Leffy quickly intervened, insisting that Layla and Eluan could handle it themselves. The next day, Yuki and Nell finally had a private conversation. Yuki sought Nell's insight regarding who had ordered her to come to the castle. Nell revealed that it was the church and not the Alicia Kingdom itself. This revelation made Yuki wonder who was truly behind all the attacks. He suspected that it might be someone with power affiliated with the kingdom. However, for now, he decided to gather as much information as he could on his own. During their conversation, Nell also found the courage to ask if the rumors about Yuki having a fetish for little girls were true. Yuki was taken aback by the question and vehemently denied such allegations, especially concerning Aruna, whom he saw as his little sister. Although it was evident that there was a deeper relationship between Yuki and Leffy, he couldn't divulge much about it at the moment. With their brief conversation coming to an end, Yuki had one more request for Nell. Despite initial hesitation, Nell eventually agreed and allowed Yuki and Leffy to accompany her to the town. Yuki's face lit up with indescribable happiness and excitement as they entered the town. Nell, being a hero, was able to move through the town without drawing much attention, allowing Yuki and Leffy to join her. Yuki's enthusiasm was apparent as he wanted to explore every corner of the town. Unable to see properly, Leffy rode on Yuki's shoulders, sparking intimate and flustering bickering between the two. Even Nell couldn't deny the closeness between them. After observing a small gathering in the town center, which Leffy couldn't view properly, Nell planned to take them to a guild. Therefore, it was necessary for both Yuki and Leffy to quickly obtain their IDs. Even a hero like Nell couldn't help but release a dry laugh at the sight of the Demon Lord and the Supreme Dragon together. Yuki eagerly looked forward to visiting the Adventurers Guild, oblivious to the fact that adventurers also killed monsters and other races. Despite learning this information, Yuki maintained his ability to smile happily. However, aside from their primary role as adventurers, it seemed that they also took on additional tasks such as working as bodyguards or gathering precious herbs. Leffy, having been attacked by adventurers in the past, entertained the idea of eliminating them altogether. However, Nell quickly advised against it, warning of the commotion it would cause once they reached the Adventurers Guild. With that in mind, Nell promptly approached the front desk to register Leffy and Yuki as adventurers. Unfortunately, the front desk appeared skeptical of Leffy, a youthful-looking lady, entering such a profession. To dispel any doubts, Nell vouched for their identities, and they were given forms to fill out. These forms required them to provide their names and specify their class. Aware that revealing their true class would create conflict, Yuki and Leffy decided to feign ignorance and inquire about classes directly at the front desk. The lady at the desk explained that the class indicated one's role in battle, and they were free to choose the class that suited their style. Alternatively, they could use the Analyze skill or an appraisal crystal to determine their class, although non-combatant classes would also be revealed. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, they decided against using such magical tools. Curious about his class, Yuki sought Leffy's opinion. Jokingly, she suggested he looked like a luggage carrier, but clarified that it was a non-combatant class. Eventually, they agreed that Yuki would be a swordsman, while Leffy would become a magician. With the second part of the form completed, they had to list their most proficient skills. When Nell inquired about their skills, she was astonished to hear them mention skills that didn't align with their chosen classes. Surprisingly, they were still able to register themselves and gain official entry into any town they desired. As a token of appreciation, Yuki gave Nell monster materials to sell, covering the expenses of their short journey. Yuki's curiosity was piqued by the pattern engraved in the identification stones. Nell explained that the pattern represented the holder's magic and was known as a magic crest. Each person had a unique pattern, making it a reliable means of identification. The card also shone brightly, and only the rightful owner could make it do so, preventing impersonation. Pondering the existence of people without magic, Yuki asked Nell for clarification. She explained that while some struggled to harness and circulate their magic, everyone possessed it to some extent. The ripple, as indicated on the IDs, represented the user's best affinity with a particular element. In Leffy's case, her affinity was with fire, although she hadn't yet demonstrated it to Yuki except for using it to burn things. Despite her embarrassment, Yuki found it amazing, appreciating the distinct quality of her fire. Their peaceful stroll took a dark turn when a group of armed men blocked their path. Unaware of Yuki and Leffy's strength, they foolishly initiated a fight with two of the world's strongest races. The group's leader, however, recognized Yuki as a demon and demanded money from them in exchange for keeping quiet. Refusing to be extorted, Yuki confronted the leader with fury, warning him not to speak ill of his companion, Leffy. Overwhelmed by the statement, Leffy nearly fainted. Taking charge, Yuki and Nell defeated most of the gang, but one adversary proved challenging due to his powerful blade. Even Nell was impressed by the enemy's weapon, but it was no match for Yuki's own creation, the pitch-black and incredibly heavy Fortress Destroyer blade. Yuki emerged victorious, astonishing his opponent who couldn't believe he had been defeated so easily. Yuki attributed his victory to his refusal to flee, despite being perceived as weak. As the enemy fell to the ground, Yuki approached his blade, cautioning Leffy that if he ever went berserk, she should stop him, even if it meant severing his arms. Leffy agreed without hesitation. Nell attempted to prevent Yuki from touching the blade, fearing its negative emotions would consume him. However, Yuki remained determined, wrapping his palms around the blade and enduring the surrounding negativity. Asserting that the weapon was now under his control, Yuki felt the blade cool down, contemplating his future plans. Leffy playfully teased Yuki about his earlier comment regarding her being his woman, but Yuki apologized, explaining it had been a spontaneous statement. Leffy reassured him that he didn't need to apologize, and Yuki was touched by the happiness he saw in her eyes. Their moment was interrupted by Nell, and they left the scene. On their way to the shops, they unexpectedly encountered another group of armed men. Coincidentally, one of them was the soldier Yuki had spoken to in the haunted forest. After explaining his intentions and plans to see the governor, the soldier assisted Yuki in securing an audience with Lord Leia Taylor. Yuki clarified that he wasn't seeking revenge but rather aimed to uncover the mastermind behind the attacks. The Lord, reluctant to share information, remained silent. Nell, introducing herself as the hero, stayed behind to further discuss the matter. The Lord confided in Nell, displaying some trust, and revealed that the prince was responsible for the attacks, driven by the belief that the haunted forest would enrich the kingdom at the cost of innocent lives. Unbeknownst to the Lord, Yuki had planted listening devices and discovered the truth. However, he realized that killing the prince would lead to war and didn't want to involve Leffy and the others. Yuki decided to keep his plans to himself and silently find a resolution, with the aim of protecting the peaceful lives of his companions. Yuki expresses his deep appreciation for their current accommodation, thoroughly enjoying the comfortable stay. However, Leffy holds the opposite opinion and still prefers their own home over any other place. Hearing Leffy mention the word home brings a smile to Yuki's face. He enjoyed everything about their current lodging, from the food to the service, but he does wish they didn't have to share a single bed. Yuki and Leffy continue exploring the city, and as they pass by the governor's mansion again, Yuki spots Nell coming out of the mansion alongside the governor. They are surprised to see Nell still with the governor, and Yuki jokingly greets Nell, suggesting that he thought the governor had come out to go sightseeing with them. The governor humbly denies it, confirming that Yuki is correct, as he wanted to inquire about the cursed weapon. Yuki teases the governor, saying that if he wants information, he should go sightseeing with them. The governor then asks Yuki if he can examine the cursed weapon and learn more about its owner. Yuki agrees and immediately examines the weapon, surprising everyone, including the governor and the knights, as he touches it without any apparent consequences. The governor expresses concern for Yuki's well-being, but Yuki reassures him that he is fine and has already tamed the weapon. Initially, the governor finds it hard to believe that someone could tame a cursed weapon, but he eventually asks Yuki to keep it away from everyone, as it is too stimulating for them. Looking around, Yuki notices that the knights are trembling in fear and wonders if it's because of the difference in their statuses. Yuki and Leffy, being plate wearers, are unaffected by the weapon. Yuki speculates that the previous owner must have been quite strong, allowing the weapon to push their capabilities beyond the norm. However, Yuki also suspects that the previous owner hadn't used the weapon for long, considering they still retain their faculties. Observing everyone's reactions, Yuki realizes the true danger of the weapon, something that has been bothering him for some time. He thanks the governor for informing him and assures him that he won't cause any further problems. Yuki explains that he plans to go sightseeing in the city and assures the governor that there's nothing to worry about. The governor suggests that it would be better if Yuki returned to the force, but Yuki finds the governor's bluntness amusing, wearing an awkward smile. Meanwhile, Leffy compliments the amazing food in the city and assures the governor that she won't allow it to be destroyed. This prompts the governor to feel obligated to reward the food vendors. As Yuki, Nell, and Leffy leave the mansion and walk down the streets, Yuki asks Nell if it's really okay for her to hang out with her enemy all the time. Nell responds by saying that it's better for her to keep an eye on Yuki and the others, as she's not familiar with the city and would rather stick with them than be with strangers. Yuki is grateful that she informed them early on. With their requests noted, Yuki expresses his desire to visit a weapon store and a bookstore, while Leffy wants to find a food vendor that serves delicious meals or sweets. They head towards the nearest locations accordingly. Upon entering a weapon shop, Yuki's excitement is evident, and he informs them that this shop is even used by the knights, guaranteeing top-quality equipment. Yuki explores the store, and his attention is caught by a sword called the Sword of the Ancient Hero. Its history tells of a nameless hero who defended others and defeated numerous powerful opponents. Though the sword now holds only a fraction of its former power, its quality is immeasurable. Yuki's enthusiasm and transformation impress Leffy. He starts contemplating when and where he could use the ancient sword, considering the possibility of reforging it to create something truly remarkable. The idea of utilizing alchemy to combine various materials into a single weapon excites him, as long as magic can be channeled through them. Yuki turns to Leffy and asks if there's anything else she needs as material. He assures her that he'll get it for her. However, Leffy dismisses the idea, stating that she doesn't need weapons, all she wants is food. Getting bored of Yuki's fascination with his toys, Leffy urges him to hurry up, reminding him that there are still many places they need to visit. With that, they move on to the next location. Having given Leffy some money to satisfy his hunger, Yuki proceeds to the bookstore. As he inhales the scent of books, he realizes their popularity in this world. While browsing, he finally finds what he's been searching for, the basics of magic. Yuki intends to improve his magic transfer skills by leveling up, using the book to create powerful enchanted weapons with a combination of fire, poison, burn, sleep, and freeze. However, to his surprise, he struggles to understand the words despite his reading skill. Nevertheless, he remains determined not to let such obstacles hinder his plans and resolves to study harder when he returns. Now it's time to meet up with the others again. Yuki consults the map and sees that Leffy is nearby. As he enters the bustling market, he is taken aback by the numerous men attempting to flirt with the girls. In response, Yuki boldly asserts that the two girls are his companions and tells the men to find someone else to hit on. His strong and commanding presence immediately intimidates the guys. Nell expresses her gratitude to Yuki, and he reassures her that they shouldn't take such people seriously, as they will eventually get over themselves. Nell understands and acknowledges his point. Yuki credits his ability to handle such situations to his experiences in his previous life. Yuki asks Nell to take them to a restaurant to enjoy some delicious food. Nell is amazed that the two of them haven't eaten enough yet and obliges. She takes them to a popular restaurant in the city, where she observes how much they eat and expresses her amazement. Yuki realizes that he has been hungry most of the time since arriving in the city. Leffy suggests that the thinner mana in the city compared to the haunted forest might be why they constantly feel the need to eat, as a way to supplement their energy. Yuki is astounded by the amount of energy required to sustain the body of a demon lord. With that realization, Yuki dives into his food once again. While eating, Yuki remembers something he wants to ask Nell about, the governor's comments regarding the demon blade. Though hesitant at first, Nell decides it's okay to share. She reveals that there have been similar cases in the past, where individuals suddenly become violent and start killing people, or go on destructive rampages. These incidents seem to have increased significantly since the beginning of the month, and when the governor couldn't find a reason behind them, the story of the demon blade emerged. Nell mentions that during interrogations, those involved claimed to have obtained the demon blade from a certain person. Upon hearing this, Yuki realizes why the city has been so chaotic. It appears that someone has intentionally spread something that can drive people to madness, much like the cursed demon blade. Yuki asks if someone is specifically targeting the city, but Nell explains that she doesn't have anyone in mind, except for Yuki and the others. Yuki quickly clarifies that they haven't done anything wrong, although Nell is aware of that. However, not everyone in the city shares the same opinion. Therefore, if Yuki plans to continue sightseeing, he must be cautious. While Yuki himself might be safe, it could be dangerous if Leffy encounters someone suspicious. For now, Nell suggests that the best way to ensure their safety is to stick together at all times. With that settled, Nell asks about their plans for the night and if there are any remaining places they want to visit. Yuki replies that he has already completed all his objectives, so if there are any tourist spots they can explore, it would be great. However, he notes that in a rural city like this, there aren't designated tourist spots since adventurers constantly fill the city day and night. To pass the time and have some fun, Demon Lord Yuki suggests taking a guild quest outside the city walls. The three of them are preparing to undertake a quest, but Nell expresses some concern about Yuki's decision. Despite acknowledging Yuki's strength, she worries about the high danger level of the two monsters they'll be facing. Yuki reassures Nell with a confident smile, assuring her that he'll be fine as the monsters in this quest are weaker than the ones in the haunted forest. He believes it will be a piece of cake. However, Nell points out that those monsters Yuki wants to face usually travel in groups, so she urges him not to let his guard down no matter what. Yuki seizes the opportunity to tease Nell, joking about her being weak-willed. In response, Leffy, not appreciating Yuki's teasing tone, almost punches him, showing her power as a magical dragon. Leffy's abilities allow her to sense the presence of enemies from a distance. Leffy initiates the quest by activating her powers, but Yuki stops her just in time as she almost uses the same destructive spell that annihilated Moffadir MK, Yuki's remarkable robot invention. Not wanting the landscape to be scorched by fire, Yuki intervenes at the right moment. Though Leffy didn't appreciate Yuki's teasing, she heeds his request and instead intends to use another spell. Yuki becomes curious about the small ball of water floating above Leffy's palms. To his surprise, when Leffy releases it, the compressed water causes a significant explosion, nearly destroying a chunk of the forest. Yuki is amazed by Leffy's power. Nell, speechless and astonished by Leffy's strength, realizes that Leffy, even without magic, could easily destroy an entire human city. Nell asks Leffy about her race, as she is shocked to the point that her soul feels as if it has left her body. Leffy reveals that she is an ancient dragon, which Nell finds hard to believe, considering the reputation and strength associated with dragon races. Before Yuki can answer Nell's question, Leffy interrupts, reminding them that she still needs to maintain her reputation. The conversation continues, with Yuki stating that Leffy is not just any dragon but the supreme dragon. Despite her youthful appearance and personality, most people don't realize her true identity. Hearing this revelation, Nell struggles to comprehend why Leffy takes orders from and follows Yuki all the time. Before Yuki can respond, Leffy shuts him down, emphasizing the need to maintain her reputation. They continue to playfully argue, and now watches them happily, finding the situation entertaining. Ultimately, they fail the first subjugation quest due to Leffy scaring away everyone, leaving only simple-minded monsters like goblins behind. Nonetheless, the fun and banter continue among the three of them,